The Discovery captain Zaravek stood at the observation deck of the Galactic Council station, watching the small blue planet rotate slowly below. Earth looked so peaceful from space with its white clouds swirling over green and brown landmasses. The ocean sparkled like scattered diamonds under the system's yellow star. It was hard to believe that this quiet world housed one of the most dangerous species the galaxy had ever encountered. 3 months ago, the Council had made first contact with humanity. The initial reports from the diplomatic team were disturbing. Commander Thek, a seasoned Altarian diplomat who had successfully negotiated with over 40 species, had returned to the station visibly shaken. His usual calm demeanor was replaced with something Zara had never seen before in her 20 years of service: genuine fear. "They're not like the others," Thek had whispered during his debriefing. "The humans smile when they talk about their history. They speak of wars that killed millions as if discussing the weather. And their entertainment?" He had paused, his blue skin turning a pale shade. "They create stories about hunting each other for sport." The Council had initially dismissed these reports as exaggeration. After all, every species had its violent past. The Zephyrians had once been raiders who conquered star systems for resources. The Corvan Empire had enslaved entire planets before joining the galactic community. Even Zara's own people, the peaceful Nexari, had fought brutal civil wars centuries ago. Violence was a natural part of evolution, something most species outgrew as they developed space travel and joined the larger galactic community. But the humans were different. They had developed space technology while still actively fighting wars on their home planet. Their global communications network was filled with detailed documentation of conflicts that made seasoned Council military historians pale. What shocked the researchers most wasn't just the scale of human warfare, but how efficiently they had learned to kill. Dr. Yenix, the Council's leading xenobiologist, had spent weeks studying human anatomy and behavior patterns. Her findings were presented to the Emergency Council session just yesterday. Zara remembered the stunned silence that fell over the chamber as Yenix explained her discoveries. Humans were persistence hunters, a rare trait in the galaxy. Most predator species relied on overwhelming strength, superior speed, or advanced camouflage to catch prey. Humans used none of these methods. Instead, they simply refused to give up. They would chase their targets for hours, sometimes days, until their prey collapsed from exhaustion. Their bodies were perfectly designed for this hunting style: efficient cooling systems, powerful cardiovascular networks, and the ability to maintain steady energy output over incredible distances. "Imagine," Dr. Yenix had said to the horrified Council members, "a species that doesn't just kill for food or territory. They hunt for the pure satisfaction of the chase, and when they finish with one target, they immediately begin planning for the next one." The really disturbing part wasn't their physical capabilities. Other species had impressive physical traits. The Corvan were stronger, the Zenthari were faster, and the Vectar had better senses. What made humans uniquely terrifying was their minds. They thought like predators, but with the intelligence and technology of an advanced civilization. Human military strategy was unlike anything the Council had seen. Most species fought defensively, trying to protect their territory and resources. Humans fought to win, completely and permanently. They studied their enemies obsessively, learning every weakness and exploiting it without mercy. Their history was filled with examples of smaller, human forces defeating much larger armies through pure strategic brilliance and relentless determination. But, perhaps most shocking of all, was how humans treated this aspect of their nature. They didn't see it as something to be ashamed of or to hide from other species. They were proud of it. Human literature, movies, and games celebrated the hunt. Their heroes were often soldiers, detectives, or hunters who tracked down dangerous prey. They had turned predation into an art form. The Council faced an unprecedented decision. Never before had they encountered a species that was simultaneously advanced enough for membership, but still retained such strong predator instincts. Most species evolved past their hunting phase before developing space travel. Those few that remained predatory usually lacked the intelligence or social cooperation needed for interstellar civilization. Humans somehow managed to be both civilized and savage at the same time. They created beautiful art, advanced science, and complex philosophy while simultaneously maintaining detailed knowledge of hundreds of ways to track, trap, and eliminate their enemies. They could discuss quantum physics in one breath and military tactics in the next, seeing no contradiction between the two topics. As Zara watched Earth rotating below, she wondered what decision the council would make. The debate had been raging for 3 days now. Some members argued for immediate quarantine, sealing the humans on their planet until they evolved past their predator phase. Others suggested careful monitoring and gradual integration into galactic society. But a growing number of council members were beginning to ask a different question entirely. If humans were such effective predators, and if they had already developed space technology, was it even possible to contain them? And more importantly, what would happen if they decided the council itself was prey worth hunting? The communication panel on the wall chimed softly, interrupting Zara's thoughts. A new message from Earth had arrived. The humans' response to the council's request for detailed information about their military capabilities and defensive systems. As she opened the file, Zara felt a chill run down her spine. The humans hadn't just provided the requested information. They had included detailed analyses of every major galactic conflict from the past century, pointing out tactical errors made by each species and suggesting improvements. It was as if they had been studying the Council's military history since the moment of first contact, automatically assessing every species as either potential prey or potential threat. Zara realized with growing horror that humanity's predator instincts weren't just a remnant from their primitive past. They were still very much active, now enhanced by advanced technology and applied on a galactic scale. The Council wasn't dealing with reformed predators who had evolved past their hunting phase. They were facing active predators who had just discovered a galaxy full of new prey. The Assessment Admiral Kethra paced nervously around the secure briefing room deep within the Council station. The Zenthari military leader had requested this emergency meeting after receiving the latest intelligence reports from Earth. His usual confidence was nowhere to be seen, replaced by the tense alertness of prey sensing a nearby predator. "Show them the footage," he ordered his aide, a young Altarian officer who looked equally disturbed. The holographic display activated, showing grainy security footage from Earth's global communications network. The Council had been monitoring human media since first contact, trying to understand their culture and psychology. What they found was beyond anything their xenopsychologists had predicted. The first clip showed something called a nature documentary. A human narrator spoke calmly while the camera followed a pack of humans, jogging through wilderness terrain. They moved with mechanical precision, their breathing steady and controlled despite covering vast distances across difficult ground. The narrator explained how early humans had hunted large prey by simply following them until the animals collapsed from exhaustion. "This is how they caught mammoths," the human narrator said cheerfully. "Just keep following, never give up, and eventually your target has no choice but to stop running." Admiral Kethra paused the footage and looked around the room at the assembled Council military advisors. "Notice anything disturbing about this?" "Commander, yes," a diplomatic Corvin raised one of her forearms tentatively. "The human speaking seems pleased about this hunting method." "Exactly. They're not describing some shameful part of their past. They're proud of it. They made entertainment about it." Kethra gestured to the display. "But wait, it gets worse." The next clip showed what humans called action movies. The footage was filled with elaborate chase sequences, humans pursuing other humans through cities, across rooftops and through dense forests. The pursuing humans never seemed to tire, never gave up, and always caught their targets eventually. The audience was clearly meant to cheer for the hunters. "Their fictional entertainment celebrates persistence hunting," noted Dr. Yenix, who had joined the briefing via hologram from her research station. "But it's evolved beyond simple physical pursuit. Look at these next examples." The display shifted to show human detective stories and spy movies. In every case, the protagonists tracked their targets using information rather than physical pursuit. They gathered clues, analyzed patterns, and slowly closed in on their prey with the same relentless determination their ancestors had shown chasing animals across ancient grasslands. "They've adapted persistence hunting to an information age," Dr. Yenix continued. "Instead of following physical tracks, they follow data trails. Instead of wearing down their prey physically, they wear them down psychologically. But the core behavior is identical. They never stop, never give up, and eventually they always catch what they're hunting." Captain Vorth, a elderly Nexari intelligence officer, raised a disturbing point. Admiral, we've been monitoring their internet communications since first contact. They know we're watching them. These entertainment programs could be deliberate psychological warfare, showing us exactly what they're capable of while maintaining plausible deniability. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. If the humans were deliberately showcasing their predator capabilities through entertainment, it meant they were already treating the Council as potential prey, studying their reactions and planning their next moves. Admiral Kethra activated another set of files. Our deepest concern is confirmed by their military history. Every other species we've encountered follows predictable warfare patterns. The Corvan Empire conquered through overwhelming force. The Zephyrian raiders struck quickly and retreated. The Vectar used superior technology to dominate their enemies. He brought up a timeline of human conflicts spanning their recorded history. Humans use every possible method, often simultaneously. They'll use overwhelming force when they have it, guerrilla tactics when they don't, psychological warfare to break enemy morale, information warfare to confuse opponents, and economic warfare to starve enemies of resources. But most importantly, they never consider any conflict truly finished. The timeline showed conflict after conflict where defeated human groups had spent decades or even centuries preparing for revenge. Unlike other species who typically accepted defeat and moved on, humans seemed incapable of truly giving up. They would retreat, regroup, adapt their strategies, and attack again from unexpected angles. Look at this pattern. Kethra highlighted several major wars. Humans don't just fight to win battles. They fight to eliminate threats permanently. When they defeat an enemy military, they restructure the enemy's entire society to prevent future conflicts. When they face a superior opponent, they don't surrender. They change the rules of engagement until they find a way to win. Commander Yes looked pale, her blue Corvan skin taking on an unhealthy gray tint. Are you saying they never truly accept defeat? Worse than that, replied Dr. Yenix. Based on their psychology profiles, humans don't really distinguish between victory and defeat. They see every conflict as a learning experience. Even their losses teach them how to be more effective predators in the future. The briefing room's communication system chimed with an urgent message from the council chambers. Admiral Kethra accepted the transmission, and the image of Council Speaker Zhe Lim appeared on the display. Admiral, we need your assessment immediately, the speaker said without preamble. The humans have sent another communication. They're requesting detailed information about Council member species, population numbers, technological capabilities, military strengths, and resource locations. They claim it's for cultural exchange and mutual understanding. Admiral Kethra felt his heart sink. This was exactly what he had been afraid of. Speaker, in military terms, what they're requesting is intelligence for target assessment. They want to know which species would be easiest to hunt, which ones have resources worth taking, and which ones pose the greatest threat. But surely they could be asking for legitimate diplomatic reasons, suggested Commander Yes, hopefully. Dr. Yenix shook her head grimly. I've been analyzing their communication patterns. Humans ask 3 types of questions about other species. First, they want to know about capabilities, what you can do that might threaten them or benefit them. Second, they want to know about resources, what you have that they might want. Third, they want to know about weaknesses, how they could defeat you if necessary. She brought up examples of human diplomatic communications with various Earth nations throughout their history. This pattern appears in every human first contact situation, whether they're meeting neighboring tribes or establishing trade relationships with distant continents. They automatically assess every new contact as a potential target. The implications were staggering. While the Council had been debating whether humans were suitable for membership in galactic civilization, the humans had already been cataloging every Council species as potential prey. They weren't asking to join the galactic community. They were conducting reconnaissance for a potential hunting expedition spanning multiple star systems. Admiral Kethra turned to face the assembled officers. We need to understand what we're dealing with here. This isn't a species that's evolved past its predator instincts. This is a predator species that's learned to use advanced technology and sophisticated strategy while maintaining all of their original hunting behaviors. He pulled up one final piece of evidence, recent communications intercepts from Earth's military networks. The humans had been conducting detailed analysis of every council ship that had visited their system. They had mapped patrol routes, identified defensive capabilities, and even begun developing countermeasures for technologies they had only observed from a distance. "They're not preparing to join our civilization," HFY concluded. "They're preparing to hunt it." The room remained silent as each officer contemplated the terrifying reality. Somewhere in the void of space, humanity was awakening to the existence of a galaxy filled with countless species, vast resources, and civilizations that had grown soft and peaceful over millennia of cooperation. For the first time in galactic history, the Council faced a predator that was just as intelligent and technologically advanced as they were, but had never lost the fundamental drive to hunt, pursue, and conquer. The demonstration ambassador Elena Rodriguez stepped off the human transport ship onto the gleaming docking bay of the Council station. She moved with the fluid confidence of someone completely comfortable in any environment, her dark eyes taking in every detail of the alien architecture around her. To the Council observers watching through security cameras, she looked deceptively ordinary, average height, unremarkable build, wearing simple diplomatic attire. They had no idea they were looking at one of humanity's most dangerous predators. Elena had volunteered for this mission specifically because of her background. Before becoming a diplomat, she had spent 15 years in human military special forces, specializing in deep reconnaissance and target elimination. Her job had been to infiltrate enemy territory, study their capabilities, and eliminate high-value targets without being detected. She was very good at what she did. The Council had requested a demonstration of human capabilities, wanting to see for themselves whether the intelligence reports about human predator behavior were accurate. They had designed what they thought was a comprehensive test, a series of challenges that would reveal the true nature of human psychology and abilities. Elena smiled as she was escorted to the testing facility. The Council members had made a fundamental error in their planning. They assumed humans would approach these challenges the same way other species did, as academic exercises or competitions to be won through superior skill or technology. Humans didn't see challenges. They saw prey. The first test was designed to assess problem-solving abilities. Elena was placed in a complex maze filled with puzzles that required advanced mathematical reasoning to solve. The Council observers expected her to work through each challenge methodically, demonstrating human intelligence and persistence. Instead, Elena spent the first 10 minutes ignoring the puzzles completely. She walked through the maze carefully, running her hands along the walls and listening to the subtle sounds of air circulation and electrical systems. She was mapping the facility's infrastructure, identifying maintenance access points and security vulnerabilities. When she finally began solving the puzzles, she did so with casual efficiency, while simultaneously testing the structural integrity of walls and examining the monitoring equipment. To the Council observers, it looked like she was multitasking. In reality, she was hunting, gathering intelligence about the facility while completing the assigned tasks. "Interesting approach," murmured Dr. Yenix, watching from the observation deck. "She's treating the test environment as potential territory to be conquered, rather than a challenge to be solved." The second test was meant to evaluate human social cooperation. Elena was introduced to a group of Council representatives from different species and asked to work with them to complete a complex diplomatic negotiation simulation. Within minutes, Elena had identified the personality type, decision-making patterns, and psychological weaknesses of each Council member. She didn't try to dominate the negotiation through force or superior argument. Instead, she carefully guided each alien toward conclusions that served human interests, while making them believe the ideas were their own. Commander Yes, participating in the simulation, found herself agreeing to trade agreements that were heavily favorable to humanity. Only after the session ended did she realize how completely she had been manipulated. Elena had identified her desire for approval and systematically provided positive reinforcement for decisions that benefited human interests. She turned the entire group into hunting tools, Admiral HFY observed grimly. She didn't negotiate with them, she domesticated them. The third test was designed to assess human physical capabilities. Elena was presented with an obstacle course that challenged speed, strength, agility, and endurance. The Council expected her to push herself to her limits, providing data about maximum human performance. Elena approached the course differently. She completed each obstacle efficiently but not at maximum effort, conserving energy while carefully observing the testing equipment and security measures. She noticed things the council hadn't expected her to see: the placement of emergency exits, the blind spots in surveillance coverage, and the locations of critical infrastructure. More importantly, she was gathering intelligence about council assumptions and expectations. By watching how they reacted to her performance, she was learning exactly what they feared most about human capabilities. "She's not trying to impress us," realized Captain Vorth. "She's studying us." The fourth test revealed the true horror of human predator psychology. Elena was shown video footage of various council species going about their daily lives, working, socializing, and engaging in recreational activities. The test was supposedly designed to assess human cultural sensitivity and understanding of alien societies. Elena watched the footage with the focused attention of a predator studying potential prey. She identified the daily routines that would make each species vulnerable to attack, noted the security weaknesses in their civilian infrastructure, and cataloged the resources that would be most valuable to human expansion efforts. When asked to comment on what she had observed, Elena provided what sounded like thoughtful cultural analysis. She spoke about the beauty of Nexari art, the efficiency of Corvin engineering, and the elegance of Altarian social structures. But Dr. Yenix, monitoring Elena's biometric readings, noticed something disturbing. Elena's brain activity patterns were identical to those recorded in human soldiers planning military operations. She wasn't appreciating alien cultures. She was conducting target assessment. Each species she observed, Dr. Yenix reported to the council later, triggered the same neural response patterns that humans show when identifying valuable resources or vulnerable targets. The final test was meant to be a simple interview about human intentions and goals for galactic citizenship. Elena sat across from a panel of council representatives, answering their questions with apparent honesty and openness. She spoke eloquently about humanity's desire for peace, cooperation, and mutual benefit among galactic species. She discussed human contributions to science, art, and philosophy that could enrich the broader galactic community. She presented humanity as eager students ready to learn from the wisdom of older civilizations. But throughout the interview, Elena was demonstrating classic human predator behavior. She mirrored the body language and speech patterns of each council member, building subconscious rapport while gathering information about their fears and weaknesses. She asked seemingly innocent questions that revealed critical details about council military capabilities and political divisions. Most disturbing of all, she was clearly enjoying herself. Elena displayed the subtle satisfaction of a predator that had successfully infiltrated a herd of prey animals without being detected. She's not just gathering intelligence. Admiral Kethra realized with growing horror. She's having fun doing it. This is recreational hunting behavior. When the testing concluded, Elena was escorted back to her ship with warm thanks from the council representatives. They believed the demonstration had shown humans to be intelligent, capable, and suitable for eventual galactic citizenship. Only the military and scientific observers understood what had really happened. In the space of a single day, one human had gathered enough intelligence to plan devastating attacks against every major council species. She had mapped the security vulnerabilities of their most secure facility, identified the psychological weaknesses of their leadership, and assessed the military value of their technologies. Worst of all, she had done it while making the council grateful for her cooperation. As Elena's ship departed the station, Dr. Yenix completed her analysis of the day's events. The report she submitted to the council would change everything. "Humans don't just think like predators," she wrote. "They are predators, the most sophisticated and dangerous predators the galaxy has ever produced. They have retained all the hunting instincts of their ancestors, while developing advanced intelligence, technology, and social manipulation skills. The question is no longer whether humans are suitable for galactic citizenship. The question is whether galactic civilization can survive contact with humanity." The infiltration 3 weeks had passed since Ambassador Rodriguez's visit, and the council still didn't know they were being hunted. Dr. Marcus Chen drifted silently through the maintenance corridors of Council Station Omega-7, his movements precise and economical. To any observer, He appeared to be conducting routine inspections of the atmospheric recycling systems, just another human technical specialist doing his assigned job. The council had approved his work assignment without question, grateful for human expertise in environmental systems. They had no idea that Marcus was a former intelligence operative who specialized in deep cover infiltration. Marcus had spent 2 months establishing his cover identity. He had genuine credentials as an atmospheric engineer, complete with published research papers and professional references. His work performance was exemplary, earning praise from both alien supervisors and human colleagues. He attended social gatherings, participated in cultural exchange programs, and even began learning Altarian poetry. But every moment of every day, Marcus was hunting. His target wasn't a specific individual or piece of technology. Marcus was hunting something much more valuable, the Council's collective sense of security. He was proving that humans could penetrate their most sensitive facilities, gather their most protected information, and position themselves to strike at their most vulnerable points. The genius of the operation was its subtlety. While the Council's attention was focused on the obvious threat of human military capabilities, they had missed the far more dangerous reality of human infiltration skills. Humans didn't need to attack. From outside, they were already inside, embedded within the Council's most critical infrastructure. Marcus paused at an intersection of maintenance tunnels, checking his handheld scanner as if looking for atmospheric anomalies. In reality, he was mapping the station's power distribution network. Over the past weeks, he had gradually assembled a complete blueprint of the facility's most sensitive systems: power generation, life support, communication networks, and defensive systems. He had also identified every security vulnerability, from physical access points to personnel weaknesses to procedural gaps. The station that the Council considered impregnable was actually riddled with exploitable flaws. Worse yet, most of these vulnerabilities existed because the Council had designed their security around threats they understood. Other Council species who fought according to established galactic warfare conventions. Humans didn't follow those conventions. Chen to Engineering Central. Marcus spoke into his communicator, maintaining his cover. I'm detecting some irregular flow patterns in Sector 7. Might want to schedule a full diagnostic. The response came from Pextor, a Corvan engineer who had become something of a friend over the past weeks. Copy that, Marcus. Your attention to detail keeps this whole station running smoothly. Marcus smiled grimly. Pextor had no idea that his friend had just identified the optimal location to introduce a catastrophic system failure that would cripple the station's defensive capabilities. Moving deeper into the maintenance levels, Marcus encountered another human team member, Dr. Sarah Kim, supposedly a xenobiologist studying Council species for scientific research. Like Marcus, Sarah was much more than she appeared to be. Any interesting discoveries? Marcus asked casually as they passed in the corridor. Oh, you know how it is, Sarah replied with apparent enthusiasm. Every species has such fascinating behavioral patterns. I'm learning so much about their social structures and decision-making processes. To any eavesdropping Council security personnel, it sounded like typical scientific small talk. But Marcus understood the real message. Sarah had been conducting psychological profiling of key Council leadership figures, identifying their fears, motivations, and exploitable weaknesses. She was gathering intelligence that could be used for targeted manipulation or elimination of critical personnel. The horrifying part wasn't what the humans were doing. It was how easily they were doing it. Council security had been designed to detect obvious threats like weapon smuggling or sabotage attempts. They had no protocols for detecting predators, who were patiently studying their prey while pretending to be helpful colleagues. Marcus made his way to one of his regular stops, the central data processing facility, where he supposedly monitored air quality for the sensitive computer equipment. In reality, he was slowly copying the Council's most classified databases. Not by hacking their systems, which would trigger security alerts, but by using his legitimate access credentials to gradually download small portions of data that appeared to be routine technical specifications. Over several weeks, these small, Downloads had accumulated into a comprehensive intelligence archive containing detailed information about every council member species, their military capabilities, resource locations, political structures, and strategic weaknesses. But Marcus wasn't just gathering information for some future human military campaign. He was proving a much more terrifying point about human predator behavior. Humans didn't just hunt for immediate gain. They hunted to eliminate potential threats, before those threats even realized they were in danger. "Hello, Marcus," came a familiar voice. Council Security Chief Vex 9 had entered the data center, making his routine rounds. The Zenthari officer had been particularly welcoming to human personnel, appreciating their technical expertise and work ethic. "Chief Vex 9, Marcus replied warmly, genuinely pleased to see the alien. "How are the security briefings going? I heard there's been some concern about potential threats." Vex 9's expression darkened slightly. "Yes, there's been some debate about certain species and their integration into council society. Some members are concerned about predatory behaviors that might pose risks to galactic peace." Marcus nodded sympathetically. "That must be a difficult balance, wanting to welcome new civilizations while protecting existing ones. I imagine it's especially challenging when you're dealing with species that think very differently from council norms." "Exactly," Vex 9 agreed. "The problem is that predatory species often don't announce their intentions. They study their targets carefully, learning weaknesses and vulnerabilities before striking. By the time you realize you're being hunted, it's often too late to defend yourself." Marcus made appropriate concerned sounds while internally marveling at the irony. Vex 9 was describing exactly what Marcus was doing to him at that very moment, and the security chief had no idea he was having this conversation with one of the most dangerous predators in the galaxy. "Well," Marcus said reassuringly, "I'm sure the council's security measures are more than adequate to handle any potential threats. You've built an impressive defensive infrastructure here." Vex 9 seemed to appreciate the compliment. "We've learned from centuries of experience dealing with various species and their capabilities. Our security systems are designed to detect and counter every known form of hostile activity." As Vex 9 continued his rounds, Marcus returned to his work with a sense of grim satisfaction. The security chief's confidence wasn't misplaced. Council security really was impressive by galactic standards. It would be completely effective against any council species that might turn hostile. But it was useless against humans, because humans hunted in ways that no other species had ever developed. They used patience instead of aggression, cooperation instead of competition, and misdirection instead of direct confrontation. They turned their target's own strengths against them and exploited vulnerabilities that other species didn't even know existed. Marcus completed his data collection and began preparing to leave the facility. As he walked through the corridors, toward the transport bay, he mentally reviewed the intelligence he and his team had gathered. They now knew exactly how to cripple every major council installation, how to manipulate key political figures, and how to exploit the psychological weaknesses of each member species. More importantly, they had proven that humans could infiltrate and compromise council security without being detected. But the most valuable intelligence wasn't technical or military, it was strategic. The humans now understood that the council genuinely wanted to believe in the possibility of peaceful coexistence. They were so invested in the idea of a harmonious, galactic civilization that they would overlook obvious warning signs, rather than confront the possibility that they had welcomed predators into their midst. As Marcus boarded the transport that would take him back to Earth, he knew that humanity's next move had already been decided. The question wasn't whether humans would exploit the weaknesses they had discovered. It was when and how they would choose to reveal their true nature to their unsuspecting prey. The Council still believed they were conducting a careful evaluation of human suitability for galactic citizenship. They had no idea that the evaluation period was over, and humanity had already decided that the galaxy would make excellent hunting grounds. The Revelation Council speaker Jay Lim stared at the classified report on her desk, her usually steady hands trembling slightly as she read the devastating conclusions. The document contained 3 months of analysis from the Council's most experienced intelligence specialists. and every page confirmed their worst fears about humanity. The report wasn't just about human capabilities, it was about human intentions, and those intentions made her species' ancient nightmares seem like pleasant dreams. "The evidence is overwhelming," Dr. Yenix said via hologram, her image flickering slightly due to the secure encryption protocols. "Every human action since first contact has followed classical predator behavior patterns. They're not trying to join our civilization, they're preparing to consume it." Lim scrolled through page after page of disturbing evidence. Human cultural exchange programs had systematically gathered intelligence about council species' psychological weaknesses. Human technical assistance projects had mapped the vulnerabilities of critical infrastructure systems. Human diplomatic missions had identified key political figures and their exploitable personal motivations. But most terrifying was the timeline analysis that Dr. Yenix had prepared. Every human activity followed a predictable hunting pattern: reconnaissance, infiltration, target assessment, and preparation for the kill phase. They were currently in the final stages of preparation, which meant the attack phase would begin soon. "How did we miss this?" Lim asked, though she already knew the answer. "We saw what we wanted to see," replied Admiral Kethra, joining the secure conference from his command ship. "Humans are perfect mimics. They showed us exactly what we expected from a civilized species seeking galactic citizenship. They spoke about peace while planning war, offered cooperation while gathering intelligence, and demonstrated friendship while positioning themselves for betrayal." The report contained intercepts of human communications that painted a chilling picture of their true plans. Humanity wasn't interested in coexisting with other species. They saw the galaxy as an ecosystem where they naturally belonged at the top of the food chain. Council species were categorized not as potential allies, but as resources to be harvested or obstacles to be eliminated. "Look at Section 7, Dr. Yenix directed. "We've decoded their classification system for council species." Lim found the relevant page and felt her blood freeze. Humans had divided all council species into 5 categories: resources, species with valuable technologies or materials; labor, species suitable for managed work programs; obstacles, species with significant military capabilities requiring elimination; experiments, species with interesting biological traits worth studying; and irrelevant, species too primitive or isolated to matter. Her own species, the Nixari, had been classified as resources due to their advanced biotechnology. The Corvin were labeled as labor because of their engineering expertise and compliant social structure. The Zenthari military was considered an obstacle requiring immediate neutralization. The Altarians were marked for experiments because of their unique telepathic abilities. "They've reduced our entire civilization to a resource management problem," Lim whispered. But the worst part was still to come. The final section of the report detailed humanity's long-term expansion plans. They intended to use the Council's own infrastructure and technology to rapidly spread throughout the galaxy, establishing human settlements on the most desirable worlds while relocating or eliminating existing populations. "They're not planning conquest in the traditional sense," Admiral Kethra explained grimly. "They're planning ecological replacement. They want to transform the entire galaxy into human territory, with other species serving as managed populations in whatever roles humans find useful." Dr. Yenix brought up a disturbing analysis of human population dynamics. Based on their reproduction rates and resource consumption patterns, humans will need to expand beyond Earth within the next 50 years or face ecological collapse. They see the galaxy not as a community to join, but as living space to claim. The holographic display showed projected human expansion patterns spreading like a virus through council space. Within 2 centuries, every habitable world would be under human control, with existing populations either displaced to marginal worlds or integrated into human-controlled systems as subordinate species. "The mathematical models are terrifying," Dr. Yenix continued. "Human expansion follows the same pattern as their historical colonization of Earth. They don't just take territory, they transform entire ecosystems to suit their needs. Species that can adapt to human-dominated environments survive in reduced numbers. Species that can't adapt become extinct." Lim closed her eyes, trying to process the magnitude of the threat. "How long do we have?" Admiral Kethra consulted his tactical analysis. "Based on current human preparations, We estimate they'll begin active expansion within 6 months. Their initial targets will be lightly defended council outposts and independent colonies, places where they can establish footholds without triggering a full military response. And their ultimate timeline for galactic dominance? 50 to 75 years for complete control of all major systems. Another century to finish terraforming projects and population relocations. They're planning a multi-generational campaign that will fundamentally reshape galactic civilization. The scope of human ambition was breathtaking in its audacity. Most aggressive species throughout galactic history had sought to conquer specific territories or extract particular resources. Humans wanted to replace the entire existing order with their own vision of how the galaxy should function. But perhaps most disturbing was how reasonable their plans appeared when viewed from a human perspective. They genuinely believed they were improving the galaxy by bringing it under unified human control. They saw Council civilization as inefficient, fragmented, and wasteful of potential resources. Their expansion wasn't motivated by hatred or cruelty. It was motivated by the absolute conviction that human management would create a better universe for everyone. They think they're helping us, J-Lim realized with growing horror. In their minds, they're not destroying our civilization, they're upgrading it. Dr. Yenix nodded grimly. Human psychological profiles show they're capable of tremendous compassion and care for other species, as long as those species accept human dominance and serve human purposes. They're not motivated by malice. They're motivated by the absolute certainty that they know what's best for everyone. A priority communication alert interrupted the conference. Admiral Kethra accepted the transmission, and the image of Captain Vorth appeared on the display. His usually calm demeanor replaced by barely controlled panic. Admiral, we have a situation at Sector 12. The human diplomatic mission to the Corvin homeworld has accelerated their timeline. Explain, Kethra demanded. 3 hours ago, humans throughout Corvin space simultaneously revealed advanced military technologies that they'd been concealing. Not weapons, defensive systems that made their facilities completely impregnable to Corvin forces. They've essentially declared independence from Corvin authority while remaining physically present on Corvin worlds. The implications were staggering. Humans hadn't invaded Corvin space. They had simply revealed that they had already conquered it. For months, human colonists and technical advisors had been quietly establishing fortified positions throughout the Corvin system. When they chose to reveal their true capabilities, the Corvin government discovered that their own homeworld was already under human control. It gets worse, Captain Vorth continued. The humans are broadcasting reassuring messages to the Corvin population, explaining that nothing will change except for improved efficiency and resource management. They're presenting the takeover as a beneficial partnership that will improve Corvin quality of life. J-Lim felt sick. Are the Corvin resisting? That's the problem. Many of them aren't. Human psychological manipulation has been incredibly effective. They've convinced significant portions of the Corvin population that human management will solve their social and economic problems. There's actually popular support for the transition in some regions. Dr. Yenix pulled up analysis of human influence operations on Corvin worlds. Look at this data. For months, humans have been identifying and addressing specific problems in Corvin society. Infrastructure failures, resource distribution inefficiencies, social conflicts. They've made themselves indispensable to Corvin civilization while positioning themselves as the solution to every major challenge. They didn't conquer the Corvin, Admiral Kethra realized. They made themselves necessary to Corvin survival, then revealed the true cost of that necessity. The communication from Captain Vorth continued with even worse news. Admiral, we're receiving similar reports from human communities throughout Council space. They're not launching a coordinated military attack. They're simultaneously revealing existing positions of strength that we never knew they had established. J-Lim stared at the strategic display as red indicators appeared throughout Council territory, marking human positions that had suddenly revealed advanced defensive capabilities. The pattern was devastating. Humans had established fortified positions near every major Council population center. The response. The Emergency Council war room hummed with desperate activity as representatives from 12 major species worked frantically to coordinate a response to the human expansion. Admiral Kethra stood before the massive holographic display, watching in real time as red markers spread across the galactic map like a plague. "Status report from all sectors," he commanded. The responses came in rapid succession, each one worse than the last. "Zenthari Command reports human fortifications have appeared on 17 worlds in our outer territories. They're offering our colonial populations protection services in exchange for resource extraction rights. Altarian Space Control confirms humans have seized control of 3 major trade routes. They're allowing passage but demanding tribute payments. Vectar Intelligence reports that human research stations in our territory have revealed themselves to be heavily armed military bases. They're jamming our communications and blocking our access to our own mining operations." Admiral Kethra processed the reports with growing alarm. The humans weren't conducting a conventional military campaign. They were implementing a sophisticated economic and political strategy designed to make resistance seem pointless. "They're not trying to destroy us," he realized aloud. "They're making us dependent on them." Dr. Yenix, monitoring the situation from her research station, provided the analysis everyone feared to hear. Human expansion follows a predictable pattern. First, they establish themselves as essential to local infrastructure. Then they gradually increase their control until resistance becomes economically impossible. Finally, they present their complete takeover as the logical solution to problems they've created. The display showed detailed analysis of human operations across multiple star systems. In every case, they had followed the same strategy: identify critical vulnerabilities in local civilization, make themselves indispensable to addressing those vulnerabilities, then leverage that dependence to expand their control. "Look at the Corvin situation." Dr. Yenix highlighted specific data. "Humans have been solving Corvin infrastructure problems for months, while quietly installing their own systems as replacements. Now the Corvin can't maintain their civilization without human technology and expertise." Commander Yes, representing the Corvin government, looked exhausted and defeated. "Our people are actually grateful to the humans. They've improved efficiency, reduced resource waste, and eliminated several social problems that had persisted for decades. The transition to human management has been smoother than most of our own governmental reforms." "That's exactly the problem," Admiral Kethra replied grimly. "They're not conquering you through force. They're making conquest feel like salvation." The holographic display shifted to show human psychological operations across Council space. Every human settlement was broadcasting carefully crafted propaganda that presented human expansion as beneficial evolution rather than hostile takeover. They weren't portrayed as invaders but as helpful neighbors offering advanced solutions to complex problems. "They're rewriting the narrative," observed Captain Vorth from Intelligence. "Instead of galactic conquest, they're calling it guided development and efficiency optimization. They've convinced entire populations that resistance to human expansion is resistance to progress itself. But the most disturbing aspect of human strategy was its long-term sustainability. Traditional military conquests required constant force to maintain control, making them expensive and unstable. Human expansion was self-reinforcing. The more control they gained, the more essential they became to their subjects. "Survival. We need to coordinate a military response," declared General Thax Vorn of the Zenthari Defense Force. "Every day we delay gives them more time to consolidate their positions." Admiral Kethra brought up tactical analysis of human defensive capabilities. "General, look at these numbers. Human fortifications aren't just defended. They're integrated into local infrastructure. Attacking them would cripple the civilian populations they claim to be protecting." The strategic situation was diabolical in its sophistication. Humans had positioned themselves so that any Council military action would cause massive civilian casualties and infrastructure damage. They had literally made themselves indispensable to the survival of populations they controlled, making military liberation impossible without destroying the people being liberated. "They've turned our own compassion against us," Jalim observed bitterly. "We can't attack their positions without harming innocent civilians who depend on human infrastructure for survival." Dr. Yenix provided additional analysis that made the situation even more hopeless. "Our economic modeling shows that human-controlled territories are actually becoming more prosperous than independent Council worlds. Their efficiency improvements and resource management are generating real benefits for local populations. Are you saying human conquest is actually good for the people being conquered? Demanded General Thax Vorn. From a purely economic perspective, yes. Human management is eliminating waste, reducing conflict, and optimizing resource distribution. Quality of life indicators are improving across all human-controlled territories. The war room fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity had developed a form of conquest that was genuinely beneficial to their victims. They weren't exploiting conquered populations. They were improving their lives while gradually assuming complete control over their futures. It's the perfect trap, Admiral Kethra said quietly. How do you fight an enemy who makes your people happier, safer, and more prosperous? How do you convince populations to resist when resistance means giving up improved living conditions? A priority alert interrupted the discussion. Captain Vorth accepted the communication, and his expression grew even more grim as he listened to the incoming report. Admiral, we have confirmation of human positions in the Nexari home system. They're not making demands or issuing ultimatums. They're offering medical assistance for the genetic plague that's been affecting Nexari colonies. Jaylem felt her heart skip a beat. The genetic plague had been slowly spreading through Nexari space for over a year, causing birth defects and reduced fertility rates. Nexari scientists had been unable to develop effective treatments, and the crisis was threatening the long-term survival of her species. How did humans even know about the plague? She asked. Dr. Yenix's analysis provided the horrifying answer. Human infiltration of Council medical networks has been far more extensive than we realized. They've been monitoring health crises throughout Council space and developing solutions in advance. They're not just offering help. They're offering cures that only they possess. The strategic brilliance was breathtaking. Humans hadn't just identified military and economic vulnerabilities. They had cataloged every possible crisis that might affect Council species and prepared solutions that would make human assistance essential. They've medicalized their conquest, Jaylem realized. They're not just taking control of our governments and economies. They're making themselves necessary for our biological survival. The communication from Nexari space continued with details that made the situation even more complex. Human medical teams were already en route to affected colonies, offering free treatment and asking for nothing in return except permission to establish medical research facilities. It's the same pattern, Admiral Kethra noted. Identify a crisis, provide the solution, establish permanent presence, gradually expand control. By the time we realize what's happening, resistance becomes impossible because it means sacrificing the benefits of human assistance. General Thax Vorn slammed his armored fist on the tactical display. There has to be a way to fight them. No conquest strategy is perfect. Dr. Yenix brought up her analysis of human psychology and strategic thinking. General, humans have been studying our military doctrine for months. They know exactly how we think, how we fight, and how we make strategic decisions. They've designed their expansion to counter every possible form of resistance we might attempt. Then what do you suggest we do? Demanded Jaylem. Surrender to human management and hope they treat us well? The terrifying thing is that might actually be the rational choice, Dr. Yenix replied quietly. Human-controlled populations are safer, healthier, and more prosperous than independent council territories. From a purely utilitarian perspective, human conquest represents an improvement in quality of life for most species. The war room erupted in angry protests from military leaders who couldn't accept the idea of surrender. But underneath the outrage, everyone understood the horrible logic of Dr. Yenix's assessment. Humanity had developed the perfect form of conquest, one that was genuinely beneficial to its victims and impossible to resist without sacrificing the welfare of innocent populations. They had turned expansion into evolution, conquest into cooperation, and subjugation into salvation. As the arguments continued around her, Jaylem stared at the galactic display and contemplated the impossible choice facing Council civilization. They could fight human expansion and condemn their people to poverty, disease, and inefficiency, or they could accept human management and sacrifice their independence for improved living conditions. Either way, the age of independent galactic civilization was ending. The only question was whether. The new galaxy 5 years had passed since the Council's formal dissolution, and the galaxy looked very different under human management. Former council speaker Jay Lim stood on the observation deck of New Geneva Station, watching cargo ships move efficiently between the orbital platforms. The station buzzed with activity from dozens of species, all working together under the guidance of human administrators. The scene was remarkably peaceful, productive, and prosperous. It was also the end of everything her people had built over millennia. "The quarterly efficiency reports are quite impressive," said Director Sarah Kim, approaching with a datapad in hand. The former xenobiologist had become one of the senior administrators for the Nexari sector, overseeing the transition from council governance to human management. "Agricultural output is up 30%, resource waste is down by half, and citizen satisfaction surveys show consistent improvement." Jay Lim accepted the datapad without enthusiasm. The numbers were undeniably positive. Human management had eliminated most of the inefficiencies and conflicts that had plagued council civilization for centuries. Crime rates had plummeted, poverty had been virtually eliminated, and scientific advancement was proceeding at unprecedented rates, but none of it belonged to them anymore. "The Corvin engineering teams have completed the new atmospheric processors," Director Kim continued. "The terraforming project on Kepler 442b is ahead of schedule. We should have another habitable world ready for colonization within 18 months. Human colonization," Jay Lim corrected quietly. "Multi-species colonization," Sarah replied with genuine warmth. "The settlement plans include communities from every major species. Humans will manage overall coordination, but everyone benefits from the expanded living space." This was the reality of human conquest. It genuinely did benefit everyone involved, as long as they accepted human authority. The galaxy was more peaceful, more prosperous, and more efficiently organized than it had ever been under council governance. Quality of life had improved for virtually every sentient being in known space. The price was freedom. "I received a message from Dr. Yenix yesterday," Jay Lim said, changing the subject. "She's completed her research on Xanthari reproduction cycles. The fertility treatments she developed should eliminate their population decline within a generation." "That's wonderful news," Sarah replied, and her pleasure seemed genuine. "Dr. Yenix has been invaluable in addressing the biological challenges facing various species. Her work with the Altarian telepathic disorders has been particularly groundbreaking. This was perhaps the most disturbing aspect of human rule, how much they genuinely cared about the welfare of other species. They weren't cruel overlords exploiting conquered populations. They were benevolent managers who took pride in solving problems and improving lives. They just happened to believe that human control was essential for optimal results." "Director Kim," Jay Lim said carefully, "do you ever wonder what the galaxy might have become if the council had been allowed to continue developing independently?" Sarah considered the question thoughtfully. "I think about it sometimes. But honestly, the council was facing some serious challenges: resource conflicts, territorial disputes, technological stagnation in some sectors. The trajectory wasn't sustainable long-term, so human intervention was inevitable, not inevitable, but probably necessary. Look at the data. Every major crisis the council faced was getting worse over time. The Corvin-Xanthari trade disputes were escalating toward war. The Altarian telepathic plague was spreading faster than research could develop treatments. The resource distribution inequalities were creating instability throughout the outer systems." Sarah pulled up holographic displays showing comparative data from before and after human management. "We didn't conquer the galaxy, Jay Lim. We rescued it from trajectory toward fragmentation and conflict. This was the narrative that humans had carefully constructed and genuinely believed. They saw themselves not as conquerors, but as necessary managers who had prevented galactic civilization from collapsing under its own inefficiencies. And the terrible thing was that they might be right. What about species autonomy?" Jay Lim asked. "The right to make our own mistakes and learn from them? That's a luxury that works for individuals, but becomes dangerous when applied to entire civilizations. Look at human history. We tried species autonomy for millennia, and it led to wars, environmental destruction, and massive suffering. Coordinated management prevents those mistakes before they happen." A communication alert interrupted their conversation. Admiral Chen, formerly Marcus the infiltration specialist, appeared on the holographic display from the Centauri Command Center. "Director Kim, we've received the final reports from the Outer Rim surveys. The probe data confirms habitable worlds in the Andromeda approach vector. We can begin preliminary expansion planning for next decade. Jalim felt a chill run through her body. Expansion to other galaxies? Limited exploration initially, Sarah explained. But yes, long-term planning includes expansion beyond the Milky Way human population growth and resource. Requirements make it necessary to consider extragalactic territories. And if you encounter other civilizations in Andromeda, Sarah's expression became thoughtful. We'll apply the same principles we used here: careful assessment, beneficial integration, and coordinated management for optimal outcomes. Other civilizations deserve the same improvements in efficiency and quality of life that we've brought to Council space. The scope of human ambition was staggering. They weren't content with managing one galaxy. They were planning to expand their benevolent control across the entire universe. Every civilization they encountered would be evaluated, integrated, and optimized according to human standards of efficiency and welfare. What if other civilizations don't want to be optimized? Jalim asked. That's always a challenge, Sarah admitted. But our experience with Council species has shown that initial resistance usually fades once populations experience the benefits of coordinated management. Most intelligent species recognize that cooperation produces better outcomes than competition. Admiral, Chen's communication continued with updates on the integration process throughout former Council space. Resistance movements had become virtually non-existent as human management delivered consistently positive results. Even former military leaders had accepted positions within the new administrative structure. The transition has been remarkably smooth, Chen reported. We're actually ahead of schedule on most integration metrics. The key has been demonstrating value rather than imposing control. When people see concrete improvements in their daily lives, they naturally want to maintain the systems that created those improvements. After the communication ended, Jalim and Sarah walked together through the station's commercial district. The area bustled with activity from multiple species: Corvin engineers working alongside human technicians, Centauri traders negotiating with Altarian merchants, Nexari scientists collaborating with human researchers. Everything worked smoothly, efficiently, and peacefully. It was a vision of galactic harmony that the Council had tried to achieve for centuries. It's impressive, Jalim admitted reluctantly. I never saw this level of cooperation when the Council was in charge. Human management eliminates most sources of interspecies conflict, Sarah explained. When everyone operates within the same administrative framework, there's no need for territorial disputes or resource competition. We can focus on productivity and development instead of politics and negotiation. They paused at an observation window overlooking the main docking bay. Ships from across the galaxy moved in carefully orchestrated patterns, their movements coordinated by human traffic control systems that eliminated delays and maximized efficiency. Do you miss it? Sarah asked quietly. The old system? Jalim considered the question carefully. I miss the possibility of it. The idea that we might have found our own solutions, made our own discoveries, created our own future, even if we made mistakes along the way. But look what we've accomplished together, Sarah gestured toward the bustling activity around them. This is better than anything the Council achieved in centuries of independent development. Yes, Jalim agreed sadly. It is better. That's what makes it so terrible. Sarah looked confused. I don't understand. You've given us everything we needed and taken away everything we were. We're happier, safer, and more prosperous than ever before. We're also no longer really ourselves. We've become optimized versions of what you think we should be. As they continued their tour, Jalim reflected on the strange fate of galactic civilization. Humanity had accomplished something unprecedented in the universe. They had created a form of conquest that was genuinely beneficial to everyone involved. They had eliminated war, poverty, disease, and inefficiency while expanding freedom, prosperity, and opportunity for all species. The only cost was autonomy, and most people had decided it was a price worth paying. In the end, humanity's predator instincts had evolved into something even more dangerous than violence. They had learned to hunt through kindness, to conquer through improvement, and to dominate through care. And as Jalim watched the ships carrying human settlers toward distant galaxies, she knew that this was just the beginning.